this evening, and I thank Pastor Jeremy for the invitation to come and join the service and preach for a moment, or maybe a couple of moments, on the readings we heard tonight. Oftentimes we talk in terms of reading the gospel, hearing the gospel, but tonight I think it would be more accurate to say that we have had an encounter with the gospel reading. Because in this gospel reading, what takes place is a huge transition in the life of the disciples, and in fact in Jesus' life. And to maybe appreciate how great a transition this is, we need to go back and recall what one of the previous gospel lessons was. And this was the gospel lesson about the confession of Peter, where Jesus had asked his disciples, "Who do the people say that I am?" And they muttered one answer or another. And then all of a sudden, Peter jumped up and blurted out, "You are the Christ. You are the Lord. You are the Messiah." And Jesus said, "Well done. God has revealed this to you." And then today we come to this gospel reading. And now Jesus has said something else to the disciples. I've got to go to Jerusalem. I've got to suffer at the hands of the elders. I've got to die and be born to new life. And again we hear Peter blurt out, "No, never shall this happen to you, Lord. No." As a protective disciple might say. And as soon as he blurts out and says that, Jesus hurls it right back at him and says, "Get behind me, Satan, for you're an impediment to me. You don't have in mind the things of God. You're thinking in terms of men." And so Peter, who had kind of been at the pinnacle after blurting out, "You are the Lord, the Messiah, the Christ," now immediately gets shoved back down with, "Get behind me, Satan. You're an impediment to me." And so you can imagine the disciples must have been really perplexed at the words that he was talking about. Because they just said, "You're the Messiah. You're the one who it's said in the Old Testament that you're going to come and liberate us," and all that. And you're talking about dying and all this other stuff. Well, what the disciples could not have known was that Jesus was in the process of changing his relationship with them. He wasn't simply going to be a trainer or a mentor, teaching them how to go out and heal, how to go out and preach, how to follow, how to do things. He was getting ready to prepare them for another task, and that was to carry on the faith after he was no longer here. And very shortly after this gospel reading, in fact 6 days after this gospel reading, Jesus takes Peter, James, and John up on a mountain. And on that high mountain, they meet Moses and Elijah. And this is a manifestation. This is the transfiguration. This is a manifestation, an illustration, if you will, to those important disciples that Jesus is the fulfillment of the prophets and the law. And while they're there, they're encased or encompassed by a cloud, which represents the divine presence of God. All of them up on this mountain. And out of the cloud, they hear a voice say, "This is my son." Can't get any more authoritative than that. God telling them, "This is my son." And so shortly after the Transfiguration, after you read a little bit more in the Gospel of Matthew, you'll hear again Jesus talking about the fact that he's got to go to Jerusalem, where he's going to die, and then be risen to new life. And this time, the disciples understand. They're on board. They realize this is the path forward. That the transition's turned. Something else happened after the transition which prepared them, and now they're ready to go with him to Jerusalem.